A world on the edge. The geopolitical crisis reshaping the global economy. The world is shifting. The rules that governed our world for the last 80 years are breaking. Trade wars, armed conflicts, crumbling alliances, a global economy being rewired in real time. The question is no longer whether the world is changing. The question is, are you prepared for what comes next? A world in fragments. Welcome to PTV. I'm glad you're here because this matters. The World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report 2026 just delivered a stark warning. Geoeconomic confrontation is now the #1 risk most likely to trigger a global crisis this year. Not climate change, not a pandemic, geopolitics. 68% of global experts now expect a fragmented, multipolar world order over the next decade, up from 64% just a year ago. For the first time since the Cold War, we are watching the world fracture into competing blocs, each with its own rules, its own currencies, its own supply chains, and the global economy sits right in the middle of this fault line, the US-China fault line. At the heart of this new world order sits the most consequential rivalry of our time, the United States versus China. Washington has raised tariff walls, restricted semiconductor exports, and is attempting to cut China out of global supply chains entirely. Beijing's response? It is doubling down on technological self-sufficiency. Rare earths, batteries, AI, robotics. Clean tech. Earlier this year, China demonstrated it was willing to weaponize that dominance, restricting exports of critical minerals to the West. The result? A world where bypassing China is enormously difficult. But depending on China feels increasingly dangerous. This is the central tension that every business, every investor, every government on Earth is now navigating. Europe at the crossroads. Meanwhile, Europe is fighting on two fronts simultaneously. The war in Ukraine grinds on, draining resources, destabilizing energy markets, and forcing a historic rethink of European defense. NATO has now set a target of spending 3.5% of GDP on defense, a figure unimaginable just 5 years ago. On top of this, Europe faces a surge of cheap Chinese industrial goods, electric vehicles, solar panels, wind components, flooding its markets. The old European model, cheap Russian energy, open Chinese markets, US security guarantees, is gone. What replaces it remains an open and urgent question. The global economy, growth without confidence. So what does all of this mean for the global economy? The United Nations projects global growth at just 2.7% in 2026, well below the pre-pandemic average of 3.2%. The US is growing but faces stagflationary pressure from its own tariffs. Europe is slowing. Japan is barely expanding at 0.9%. The developing world faces the sharpest pain: high debt, rising borrowing costs, and shrinking aid flows. The UN estimates over 350,000 deaths have already been linked to cuts in global aid since January. Meanwhile, a tech-fueled AI investment boom is raising fears of a financial bubble, with over $400 billion poured into data centers globally in 2024 alone. The world is growing, but it is growing anxiously. Growth without confidence. Momentum without direction. What this means for you, the opportunities in the chaos. Now, here is what most analysis misses. Geopolitical disruption does not only create risk, it creates opportunity. 1. Supply chain reshoring is creating a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure boom. Countries like India, Vietnam, Mexico, and the Gulf states are absorbing manufacturing investment at historic levels. 2. Defense spending across Europe and Asia is surging, opening new sectors for technology, aerospace, and cybersecurity investment. 3. The race for critical minerals, lithium, cobalt, rare earths, is rewriting the economic fortunes of resource-rich nations in Africa and Latin America. 4. The AI and quantum race, despite its bubble fears, is accelerating productivity gains in sectors from fintech led by Web3 tech to healthcare to logistics. The countries and businesses that adapt fastest to the new rules will define the next era of global wealth. The age of passive globalization is over. The age of strategic positioning has begun. The world has always changed. Empires have always risen and fallen. What is different today is the speed and the stakes. Decisions made in Washington, Beijing, India, Russia, EU, France, Germany, and UAE over the next 24 months will shape the economic reality of the next generation. PTV exists for one reason. We are People's TV. We help you understand the world clearly so you can navigate it confidently. We bring together the news you can trust from our journalist teams who go to great lengths to the audience we love and care about most. Our teams strive for excellence to add credibility and depth to news reporting. PTV has always been about empowering people for good.